This is Anthony Smith with Simply Colorado, and we have a new segment called On the Road. This week, we're in St. Francis, Kansas for the first annual motorcycle rally, and we get an exclusive tour of the St. Francis Motorcycle Museum. They have some amazing bikes here, and I can't wait to show you. All right, I get a chance to get a private tour of the St. Francis Motorcycle Museum, and I have Scott Schultz, currently the mayor of St. Francis, as well as one of the chairmen for the Motorcycle Museum. Good morning, how are you doing today?
Good morning, glad to have you here.
Oh, well, glad to be here, So, this is an amazing place. I've been here many times, but this is the first time we actually get a chance to share it with the people of Colorado in our YouTube channel. So I wanted to get a better understanding of, how it got started, why this motorcycle museum came about.
Okay, well, probably about 3 years ago, 3.5 years ago, there's a kid that lives here, and his dad has collected motorcycles all of his life, and the opportunity came up that if we found a building to put him in or build a building, he would bring us motorcycles. So we decided we'd visit with him when we did, and he said that he would be very much interested in bringing motorcycles to our town. And so we decided this would be a great destination for St. Francis, Kansas. So we started working hard to raise money, and it took us probably about a little over a year and a half, and we raised in the neighborhood of $350,000 to put up a brand new building to bring these bikes to make us a destination.
So another thing, when he was mentioning destination, St. Francis, Kansas is just about 187 miles from Denver, so it's an easy 3-hour drive for people who are on a motorcycle, or on a bike, or caravan, what have you, to be able to come from Denver, to be able to come to Kansas, to be able to see this amazing place. So how many bikes are here?
We've got, right now, we gained 2 more yesterday because we started a motorcycle rally, but I think we got 117 in here now. 117 different bikes. There's the motorcycles, some mini bikes, some Cushmans, and so forth. And there's like 41 different manufacturers included in that 117 units that we have in here.
So, when you say that, is there one manufacturer that's more prominent, or just a good mix of everything?
It's a really good mix. We've got a lot of the what we call the metric bikes, the Nortons, the Yamahas, the BSAs, I'm just trying to think of all of them right now, but they're Triumphs. There's just a good mix of those bikes, and then there's a good mix of all kinds of American-made bikes, from Orients to the Harleys that everybody knows, or the Indians everybody knows. It's just a really good mix of bikes in here. There's 2 main collectors in here, and the collectors that have most of the Hondas, Nortons, Triumphs, Yamaha, Hondas, and so forth. That's a collector out of Aurora, Colorado. His name is Wayne Lang, and they own and operate Aurora Honda up there, which is existing and motorcycle shop up there. And his 2 boys work with him out of that shop and so forth. So we have several of their bikes, and then the other main collector is Mike Bonmeyer. He's from Wichita, Kansas, and that's where this basically started from, because his son lives here. And so his is all American-made stuff. And so there's bikes in here that I never knew existed, like an Emblem, Orient. They're just all kinds of old bikes that were American-made. A lot of the companies, they didn't last very long. A couple years, and they were done for. They, had trouble funding themselves back in those time periods, and so a lot of them got weeded out really quickly, and that's why these bikes are rare and hard to find.
So do you guys do any service here, or I noticed some pans and things around, but are any of the bikes serviced here, or you just kind of house them for people to see?
No, these are just housed for people to see. Almost every one of these bikes, if we put the batteries in them and gas in them, we'll start up and run. And that's why there's pans underneath them, because all of them do leak a little bit here and there. So we do have pans under them. and stuff just to protect our floors and so forth. But I think just there's a handful in here that wouldn't run, but most of them would start up and run.
This is a pretty interesting design, and we'll show you here in a bit, the building with sort of a patina, sort of ageless kind of look. How did the design come about of the motorcycle museum?
Well, when we started raising money, we had one big contributor gave us enough money that he said put up a new building. So there's where we went to, is a new building. We had another guy that owned the lot. He gave us the lot. And so we had an idea. This was an empty lot. So on the west wall of the building is the theater wall. And it's the old brick from the late 40s, early 50s brick wall that we just incorporated into the building. And then on the rest of it, you'll see different types of barnwood, lap siding, rusty tin, galvanized tin. We wanted to give it a old look to kind of go along with the nostalgic look of the bikes and so forth. So we went and tore buildings down to put in here, and there were several volunteers, and we worked many hours to get it done to look like this.
I mean, it's an amazing place. Like I said, I've been here a handful of times, and every time I come here, there's something different. There's a new set of bikes, or there's a new exhibit, or there's just a different look. I mean, I see bikes here that weren't here at the opening. So how often do you guys change in and out the bikes?
Oh, we're kind of tied in with, there's an arm museum. It's called the Kansas Museum in Marquette, Kansas. And this Bonmeyer has 35, 40 bikes down there. We do a little trading back and forth with them, but then also anybody that comes up with a bike that as a board we go through and look at them, because we do have a few other bikes mixed in here too that are from other places, other towns, people. And so we just kind of try to just keep some new stuff coming in, and we might switch some stuff with another museum just to keep a different rotation going on in here.
I mean, so that's one of the things I love the most about this place. Again, I've been here lots of times, and there's a different bike every time. So now that you guys have looked at this place from afar, we're going to do a quick tour and show you all the bikes that they have here.
I'm just going to briefly walk through, explain a few of the bikes and so forth, and just go through here quickly and show you what we do have in this motorcycle museum of ours in St. Francis, Kansas. One of the things is a lot of people didn't realize that they dropped Cushmans in World War II. They dropped Cushmans from a parachute down to the guys in Normandy, and so we've made a little display with a parachute there, and then there's a bike in the background on the stand that was used during the service time also. Then over in this corner is a selection of Cushmans and a little mini bike there and so forth, and different types of Cushmans here. And the Cushmans were all made in Lincoln, Nebraska. And so these Cushmans belong to just different people here. But it's kind of a neat display because a lot of people grew up and they rode a Cushman. Then down this east wall is the Wayne collection that I mentioned before out of Aurora, Colorado, Aurora Honda. And these all belong to Wayne Lang and his sons. And there's a little bit of everything here. You got the Hondas, the BSAs, the Triumphs, the Yamahas, and they're just a good assortment of all kinds of bikes on this wall that a lot of us grew up on. A lot of the bikes on this wall, there's a couple of bikes that have 0 miles on them and just were never ridden, and which is unique. They just never was sold for some reason, and he hung on to them and kept them, and so brought them to us for display. As we go on down through here, you'll notice a few gas pumps that have been restored and so forth. Another person has put these gas pumps in, and they're restored gas pumps from back in the era, and so it gives us some more of the look that we were after. And on that east wall, that's a barn that we tore down. It's got the barn wood, it's got the tin, it's got the rusty tin. We just put it all together to make that look on this east wall. We have another little, it made the world land speed record for a little bike, the Bonneville record holder. It's in here, and a guy down in Wichita, Kansas owns it also, and a different person, but it's just a unique little unit that he raced at Bonneville and set a record. Our newest bike is a 2016 motocross racer, and we normally don't put anything that new in here, but this was kind of something special here. It won a lot of races, and so background some of the pictures of the guy that raced it and so forth, and they wanted to bring it here, so we did add that to our collection. It's really popular with the young kids. They just love to look at the race bike that's hanging up here on the wall. Then coming back down through here again, this just is a whole different lineup of pretty well these are all Harleys here. And the newest one here at this far end would have been a 1984, and then they go clear down to the 50s at this other end. We pretty well don't have two of a kind in here. There might be two of them that look really similar, but basically we are not trying to duplicate anything, because that would take away from what we're trying to do here, show as many bikes and different bikes as we can without having two of a kind. We do have in the Harleys, everybody's heard of the pan head, shovel head, and the different motors on them, knuckle heads. We got all of them in here. Been a lot of evolution in how motors were built, and just how the bikes in general run. All of them have different shifting gears on them. They've changed them over the years compared to what we ride today. These bikes rode totally different back then. As we're coming across here, and these are some Harleys here also, but then we're going to jump over, and this is new to our museum as of yesterday, September the 2nd. It's a drag bike, and it was from the Bonmeyer collection also. He brought it to us yesterday. Then back here, there's up on the box is an Ace, and then there's the red one's a Cleveland, and then the green one is an Indian. These are 4-cylinder inline bikes, and so it's amazing that we've got 3 different models that have inline motors in them. On the back wall behind these bikes, you'll see another race bike, drag bike, and Bonmeyer raced that for years. He has set some records with that, and there's trophies and more trophies and stuff on display here also with it, but and he's still racing today. As we come across here, we'll come back up toward the front here. This is the only Harley sidecar we have in here. It's unrestored, a barn find. It's 1945. And this is a Harley, 1960 Harley XLR race bike. And then next to it is what they call the Hummer. It's a Harley Hummer, and they were a smaller bike that a lot of people bought back in the days. 125 Hummer. Up in this corner, we have just hold a lot of different stuff in here. These are mini bikes, and then also the Whizzer, which was actually a bicycle that you could order. You could just order the bicycle and then later order the kit to turn it into a little motorbike. But a lot of people remember that and grew up with it. But there's just different types of units in here. This sign that's leaning against the truck just came in yesterday, September the 2nd. We're going to get it hung up on the wall. It's just an old picture and some guys racing back in the days. But on the truck came from a local guy here in town. We wasn't going to put a truck in a motorcycle museum, but after we did some talking with the people and they wanted us to put it in here, we decided if he'd let us put a motorcycle up in it, that's what we did. And so we put the Excelsior up in there, and it's kind of time period to what the truck would have looked like back in the days. In fact, the bike is older than the truck, and the Excelsior was, it's got a trophy there and a helmet and everything with it. It was a bike that was raced 300 miles in 3 hours and 29 minutes and 51 seconds. It set world record. So that old bike on the old country roads was averaging 85.7 miles per hour. We go down through here, just a various collection of bikes. This first one is called the Pea Shooter Hill Climber. That's what they raced up in the Black Hills when they were trying to climb the hills fast. Put a chain on the back of the bike and strip it down and go racing up a hill. Then as we go down through here, these bikes are going to get older as we go around. This is a 1922 board track racer. And if you haven't seen board track racing, you can get on YouTube and look it up. It is amazing. They went out and built a track out of wood, and these guys went out there and raced around there, and almost all these do not have brakes, and you had to push or pedal them to start them, but no brakes, and just go fast. And then just different units. There's a 20. Then this Indian up here is called the Flying Freddie Dixon, and it was in several races, and he was in the Isle of Man race, and so just a very neat looking bike. Then this next one is a 1920 Model J. We don't know what we call this, because this guy, and that's why it's left just like it is, this guy added all kinds of stuff to it and just made it look different. He made it his own bike, and so it just, that's the way it was left. Now, we haven't mentioned too much about the Indians. There was a couple of Indians over there in the 40 and 50 era. Here's a 1920 Indian Scout. Like I said, all these bikes I've been talking about here, all these names that maybe you haven't heard, they're American made. We got the Reading Standard, we've got a Pope, and then we've got a Yale. And these are just getting older as we come around here. We've got, and then we're back to a 1913 Harley now. And the bike, the Flanders with 2 seats on it, is a 1912 Flanders. And you're probably not going to see that bike too often. Most of these bikes are getting harder and harder to see unless you go to a museum, and there's several museums in the country now. In fact, there is 4 museums in the state of Kansas now, and 4 years ago, there's only 1 museum in Kansas, and so forth. So like a lot of these companies, they didn't last too long trying to build a bike, a couple years, and they couldn't get the financing or just didn't work out for them and they sold out to somebody else, but that's why they're rare. Now we got a couple more Harleys sitting in here. Some of them, if you noticed while Anthony's filming this, some of them are totally restored and then some of them aren't. And so the collector, if he found something that was good enough that just clean up, that's how he left it. But he also made them mechanical where they would run. But then if they're really shiny, got new paint on them, he had to restore them because there was just too much work to be done to them. So as we come around here, now we're getting down to a 1911 Harley, a 1910 Yale, and then a 1909 Marsh-Metz, which I didn't know that that bike existed until he brought it to us. And every one of these bikes, we try to have a write-up on them that's right out front, down below by their front tires. We didn't want to stand something up that would be in the view of the bike. So if you come to the museum, you can look down there, you can read. There's a lot of history on all these bikes. Now we've got a vault, and the reason behind the vault is the bikes that are in the vault are pretty well going to be irreplaceable. And so if we come in here, I'll explain some of them. We'll just start back in this corner, this Feilbach Limited. I think there's 5 of them known to exist. This one's unrestored, 103 years old, unrestored. I think they say there's 5 of those known to exist. And then we come around to the blue one. It's an emblem. I'd never heard of that. Mike bought that about a year ago in 1915, and supposedly there's only 3 of these known to exist. And when I say known to exist, that doesn't mean that somebody might have something in a private collection that nobody knows about. The Indian is an 07 Indian, almost resembles a bicycle, which that's what they started doing back in the 1900s, putting a motor on a bicycle. But it's called the Camelback because the gas tank's on the back fender. The 02 Orient, there's only 2 02 Orients known to exist, and one's in another museum. This one is totally complete. From our understanding, the other one's missing a couple little pieces on it. I don't know what they're missing, but I mean, I'm sure it looks basically the same because I wouldn't know what was missing myself if something was missing on it. And like on this 02 Orient, the rim is wood with the metal spokes going into it. So it's a lot of craftsmanship went into all this bikes and stuff. And that's the 02 Orient, and that is the oldest bike we have in the museum. The 16 Harley, the gray, is the Model JE. That 16, that was the only time that color was ever offered on it. The Flying Merkel, he was in big competition with Harley. Joe Merkel was his name and stuff. It was quite the bike and so forth. There's a few of these out there that have been restored and so forth. It's just a real eye-appealing bike because of the color and so forth. And then we have a 1913 Jefferson that has been partially restored, and to our knowledge, it's the only one known to exist in any museums anyway. And but like I said, somebody privately could own one of these and that people don't know about. But these bikes in this vault are just bikes that would be almost impossible to find again. And so that's why we keep them in the vault. That pretty well, I think, covers everything in here. Again, we're in St. Francis, Kansas. 3-hour drive, a 200-mile radius. Like Denver, you can be here in 3 hours. Loveland, 3 hours. You go up to North Platte, Hayes, Kansas. it's just a nice one-day ride into St. Francis and come in and look the museum over. There's people that spend, on the average, they'll spend an hour in here, but there's people that'll spend 3-4 hours in here because there's so much to see. And then they come back again. And you know, several months later, here they come with a friend because they go, oh, I didn't see this bike. Well, it was probably in here. They just missed it because there's so much to see. Hey, we do have 2 maps in the museum, and we've got pins by the map. So when people come in, we like for them to place a pin from where they're from. This is the world map. We've got 31 countries covered on this world map. I mean, South America, there's 4 or 5 pins in there. Australia, there's 7 or 8 pins. There's New Zealand. There's just Asia. There's just all over the board. And so it's interesting how people do travel through, and they're not all necessarily bikers by no means, because some people see the signs and hear about us, and they are stopping to look at the collection that's in this museum. And on our U.S. map on the other side over here, we've covered every state, 48 states. We haven't covered Delaware and Maine. It's the only 2 states that have not been in here yet. So those people, if somebody's listening and they're from Delaware or Maine, come. We need you on the map.
As Scott was saying, the Motorcycle Museum here in St. Francis, Kansas is about 3 hours northeast of Denver, Colorado. It's an amazing place with a great group of volunteers. I'll put information about where you can learn more about the Motorcycle Museum and information below. And if you like the video, please like and subscribe. And remember, live simply, Colorado.